Hi, everybody. It's a real pleasure to be here. First of all, I want to thank Montecito Bank and Trust. They are our partners, and they are very aligned with our values at the museum, and we're incredibly thankful to them for both their stewardship, and they're so easy to work with, okay? I don't know how many of you have called your bank and been stuck. That never happens to us. I'm just saying. So thank you so much. And second of all, you know, I'm the one who's very lucky and who gets to stand up here and talk, but I am just one tiny piece of the mosaic of the museum, and we couldn't do it without everybody else. I want to acknowledge 3 of my 15 bosses, AKA the board of the museum, who are here: Bill Kearney, Diane McKay, and Al Lowe. And yes, applause. And then look at this perimeter. Okay, over here, these are just some of the museum staff members. Christy too, thank you so much. I feel very lucky and thankful to work with you every day. Okay, so I am going to try to speed through the story of the separation of Ventura County from Santa Barbara County. How many of you here knew, Judy and Faye, you don't get to talk because you're like the official historians. How many of you knew that Ventura County used to be a part of Santa Barbara County? Okay, quite a few. Yes, okay, this is that group. All right. Most people do not know that. So I'm going to try to spend about 20 minutes talking about this, leave a little bit of time for questions. So before we get into what actually happened, I want to talk about the historical context of California in general, this land that we now know as California. One of the things that I hope you'll take out of this talk is that this split of what is now Ventura County from Santa Barbara County didn't come out of nowhere. It was absolutely the result of a lot of different things that had been boiling up in the state, in the region, and in the nation. And so I just want to set the stage for you a little bit. So I think you all know that since pre-recorded times, this region, including the Santa Barbara and Ventura County, has been the home of the Chumash Native Americans. So they've been here for thousands and thousands of years. The first recorded visitor that we have from outside of the area was in 1542, when a Portuguese sailor named Juan Cabrillo, who was sailing for Spain, landed here. It was actually from this visit that the name California came. So this is the cover of a book called The Adventures of Esplandian. And no joke, Esplandian had some adventures, and one of them took him to a wonderful island, which is described as very like the Garden of Eden, that was ruled over by a tribe of benevolent warrior women. And it was known as California. Okay, so that's where the name comes from. In 1769, New Spain was created, which incorporates what's now Mexico and California. In 1822, the Mexican Revolution happened, and the area of California swore allegiance to the new government of Mexico. So we were part of Mexico for about a quarter century, and then the Mexican-American War happened. Spoiler alert, the Americans won. And California became part of the United States in 1848 and became a state 2 years later. So in 1850, when we became a state, this is what the counties looked like. There were 27 counties at that time. I pointed out congressional districts. There were 2. I wonder if my pointer will work. I'm never very good. The congressional districts were basically, let me see, like this, and then everything, whoa. Everything else down here was its own congressional district. The population of the state at that point was about 92,600 people, and Santa Barbara County, which is this, differently shaped from what it is now, was 696 people. So if that sounds like a very few, because it does, I just want to tell you that San Diego, this is San Diego, had 798 people. This is according to the 1850 census. Population was very, very, very much concentrated up here. For example, San Francisco County had 25,000 people. LA had 3,500 at that time. All right, so that is where it was in 1850. And obviously, we're going to flash forward about 20 years to when the split actually happened. But before we do that, let's think about why changes like this happen, right? This is a story of change. And there's a lot of times in our lives when we either come together or we separate. You can think about it in terms of companies with mergers and acquisitions. You can think about it in terms of relationships with marriage and the other thing, right? And there are certain things that lead to this in general. So one of them is proximity. If you are close to someone, I'm talking geographical proximity, you tend to be together more. And if you're far away, you tend not to be. So arguably, this is the number one reason for the split of Ventura County, what was then known as East Santa Barbara County, away from what became Santa Barbara County. This is a photograph from the 1890s. This is, it's in our exhibit right now, by the way. It is a photograph of the blasting of the mountains along the Rincon to create space for the railroad tracks. So before this happened, many parts of the Rincon, you know the mountains, some of you drove that, right, on your way from Santa Barbara, came all the way down to the beach. So those of you who live on the beach, Bill Kearney, looking at you, you know that the tides come in twice a day, every day, no matter what. So if the mountains come all the way down to the beach and the tide is coming in twice a day, that means that if you are here, if you're a Santa Barbara resident living here, and you need to go up to the county seat to, I don't know, record a transfer of property or sue somebody or whatever, 2 times a day, every day, you cannot get by. There is no way for you to go. So that is arguably the number one reason for the split, and certainly they talked about this in the papers of the time. Okay, another reason that you might come together with somebody or go away, did somebody move my water? No, here it is, okay, is because of resources. So you might come together over resources if you think that if you combine resources, you might get economy of scale or the pie might get bigger. And as we know, if you have a sense that you are not getting your fair share of the results from resources, you are going to want to pull further away. This was heavily talked about in the paper. The divisionists, which is what is now Ventura County, eastern Santa Barbara County at the time, postulated that they paid the same amount of taxes as western Santa Barbara County, and they did not receive the same amount of resources. So improvements were being made up in western Santa Barbara County. The western Santa Barbara County response to that, because let's face it, it was probably true, right? We all know that. You know, you tend to make your improvements on things that you see, that you're around every day. Their response to that was not, no, we can't afford to lose the money. Their response was, you don't have enough people to support the level of government that you need. It costs about $30,000 to $40,000 a year to run a county government. How sweet is that, by the way? And your 2,000 residents can't support that. Another thing that leads, to either coming together or to splitting apart is ideology, values, mission, alignment, etc. Now, everything that I am talking about pretty much here in this report is taken from our library and archives, also newspaper clippings, you'll see a lot of that. And it is, this is not my full-time job, so I did not spend weeks researching, so maybe it's there, but I could not find written down anywhere, we just don't like them, right? They're different from us. The only thing that I could really find, although I think we know that that was also part of what was going on here. The only thing that I could really find was that in the Santa Barbara Weekly, the anti-divisionists talked about how the western Santa Barbara County was heavily Republican and the eastern Santa Barbara County was heavily Democrat. So the paper up there said, y'all are silly to try to want a division because if you're Republicans, you're the leaders, you're gonna get voted out of office and you're gonna have no say. And then there are other things, external drivers, emotion, desire for power, and these can go either way, right? They can lead to a merge or they can lead to a split. So I want right now to look at some of the external drivers and take a look at the larger picture of what was happening, both nationally and regionally. A lot happened in that decade leading up to 1870 when the first attempt to split was presented. Lincoln was elected. There was a civil war. The Homestead Act of 1862 came about, which had a profound impact here. That gave people the right to 160 acres of unclaimed land if they could improve it. And it was designed to bring people out to the West. Delaney, how am I doing on time? I'm at 5 minutes? Oh, I'm at 10. Oh, okay. Okay. I'll hurry. There was catastrophic weather from 1862 to 1864 here in California. In a moment, I just want to talk about that for a second. Most of us have forgotten about it. Many of us never even knew about it. There were floods, then droughts, then floods, then droughts. It all started on Christmas Eve of 1861. It started raining, and it rained straight for 43 days. When the clouds finally cleared, the inland valley was a sea, basically, 200 miles long and 20 miles wide. Sacramento was under 10 feet of water. They couldn't do any business. And that incredible flood was followed by a drought where the livestock was dying off incredibly, et cetera. So it was an incredibly difficult time. And to give you a sense of the change, how it changed the socioeconomics of our region, livestock was a predominant industry, and the tax rolls for Santa Barbara County in 1860 show 200,000 head of cattle. Tax rolls in 1865, 10,000. So it's a 95% reduction in the main industry. The city of San Buenaventura was incorporated, second city in Santa Barbara County to be its own town with a city council of 5. The Transatlantic Railroad was completed in 1869. Again, a huge push of people into this western region. The Hueneme Squatters' War happened. I put it up there because it's an example of a lot of conflict that was going on between landowners and people coming in and being told by the government, you can go out there, there's lots of land, and then they got here and there wasn't so much land. So that was a lot of what was happening too. And 3 wharfs were built between 1871 and 1872. Stearns in Santa Barbara, the Hueneme Wharf, and Ventura. All of these things were leading people to come here. So in the 1860s, there were a couple of key personalities that came into Santa Barbara County. And there were a lot because the population grew to about 7,000, which was faster than the state of California growth, which was growing by about 600% at that point. One of these people was Thomas Scott. Thomas Scott is a really interesting story all by himself. He was born in Pennsylvania. He was one of 7 children. He was not wealthy. He became a railroad clerk, and he eventually grew into be the president of Pennsylvania Railroad. This is what I thought of. That's not in our archives, by the way. I got that off the... he was actually, and just one little fact, he was the mentor to Andrew Carnegie. Okay. He was the Assistant Secretary of War during the Civil War, and in the 1860s, he started dabbling in oil speculation out here in the West, and he bought a ranch in Ojai. He sent his agent, also his nephew, Thomas Bard, out. He arrived in 1865. Now, Thomas Bard must have been quite a guy because he was elected to the Board of Supervisors, one of 3 members of the Board of Supervisors of Santa Barbara County, 2 years later. And here he is. We have a lot about Thomas Bard in our collection. All right, so that was what was leading up, and then let's talk. There was the first petition for a split in 1869. It was brought forward by this man, Angel Escandon. He was one of the first city council people in Ventura. It was immediately, was introduced in January of 1869. In March, the Board of Supervisors wrote a unanimous remonstrance to the legislation, arguing against it. Saying that the residents, as I already said, of the proposed new county would not be able to afford the government. And look, they stood to lose a lot. 15 or 30%-ish of their revenue was coming from this territory that was intended to be split off. Also, in the original legislation, the split would go into effect immediately. So they would lose all the taxes immediately. They had set their budget. They said it would cripple them entirely. Thomas Bard went up. He was a heavy lobbyist at that time. He worked with a man named Romualdo Pacheco, a little bit more about him. And that petition failed. Okay. So this is a really good story of if first you don't succeed, try and try again. That's really true in this one. The people who had been behind it went back, retrenched. I actually love this little letter that was from some of the city letters talking about how wonderful Escandon was and how horrible Senator Pacheco was. And he sold himself and the best interests of his constituents to the rapacious land sharks. Okay. So they came out strong against Romualdo Pacheco. It didn't work. He was subsequently the treasurer, the lieutenant governor, the governor, an assembly member. I'm forgetting something else that he was. Very successful guy. But they did learn it kind of matters who you lobby with. 15 minutes now? Okay, great. So they tried again. Leading up to their trying again, and this, we really can't say how important this might have been, the Ventura Signal, the first newspaper in East Santa Barbara County was started. It was started here in Ventura by this guy, John Bradley. You should know that newspapers, local newspapers back then, were not like we kind of grew up with them being. There was very little national, international news, a lot of ads, and a lot of items of sort of local color. And in fact, it kind of reminds me of Facebook when I hear about it, which is, interesting. John Bradley was a staunch pro-divisionist, and he wrote articles every week. It was a weekly paper. And again, I put this up because it was not, you did not have to pretend like you didn't have a side in this whole thing, right? It was completely understood that the journalists were writing with a very, very clear objective. So in January of 1872, a different assembly member, Joel Cooper, who's actually from San Luis Obispo, went up and introduced the petition. It had been signed by 95% of the population of eastern Santa Barbara County, and the pro-divisionists sent up their own guy to lead the lobbying, which is William Dewey Hobson. He stayed up there for a couple of months, and very interestingly, this time, 3 years later, Thomas Bard supported the split. He was still a supervisor. There was a lot of lobbying and trading. There was a lot of rumors and counter rumors. The thing almost went down because a rumor came about, which is written here. Madam Rumor, a tangible shape. Oh wait, a Madam Rumor who knows a deal and always tells more than she knows. Okay, very interesting. There was a rumor that the bill got sent back for amendment, and that the amendment expanded the area to go to Ventura County to up above Carpinteria. Okay, that was not great. So anyway, there was a lot of lobbying and trading going on, and when I read about it, it really reminded me of this. Do any of you remember Schoolhouse Rock? Okay, the museum people know Schoolhouse Rock. I'm just a Bill. Ultimately, it passed. It was approved on March 8th of 1872. And this is the original articles about it. It was signed on March 22nd. We have these in our library. So this is a scan from that document. No, they're ours. Yes, no, Santa Barbara did not get them. We got them. And look, this is just like one little snippet of change. We are not the only ones who are changing. Again, here's the counties of California in 1850. Here they are today. And interestingly, we ended our change right in about 1872. Nothing more really happened. And here I talked about the congressional districts. I mean, I bring this up because this is a very topical conversation, right? So these are the congressional districts in 1902. I don't even know, are these the proposed ones or are these the current ones? I don't know, but this is what is happening today at this moment in time. I want to say one more thing because I've talked a lot about sort of what was happening leading up to it, and what I really can't get into is how life was different because of this split. I only want to bring up this one story, which is, this is Tom Moore. We did an exhibit about Tom Moore about 2 years ago. Tom Moore was murdered by squatters in the middle of the night over a land dispute. Squatters thought it was their land. He said that it was his. The reason I bring it up is when this whole dispute started, Tom Moore was a very, very well-known man in Santa Barbara. He owned Rancho Sespe. When the dispute started, it was being deliberated by the Santa Barbara courts. During the dispute, it went down to the Ventura County courts. Tom Moore was very unpopular in Ventura County. The sentiment was very much with the squatters. So we can't say that maybe it would have been settled sooner. We don't know. All we know is that it was a long dispute, the courts changed, and he did ultimately get murdered. And then I just want to say, as I already said, I took most of this from our archives. This is one little piece that we have in our archives that I just love. It's the Great Register, which is what you had to have to conduct a vote. And this one is from 1914, and this is what it looked like. Just very entertaining. Also, here's a tally list from the general election in 1892. That's how they kept track. I was talking with my husband about this last night, and you'll notice this is the 1892 election, and this is when Grover Cleveland was elected. You don't see his name because at this time in California, you voted for an elector who then was wiser than you and would participate in the presidential election. All right, I went a little bit over. I don't know if we have any room for any time for questions. I probably can't answer them anyway, but I really want to thank you for your support of the museum and for listening to this one little tiny story, which is one of hundreds of thousands of stories that we have in our museum.